Welcome back everybody, I'm Nick930, and today I want to share with you my thoughts on the most recent entry to the long-running Call of Duty series, Modern Warfare 2. Modern Warfare 2, if you somehow didn't already know, is a military-themed first-person shooter game, created by Infinity Ward and published by Activision. In it, players assume the role of multiple members of a tactical special operations unit called Task Force 141, who were sent around the world to stop a terrorist plot involving stolen missiles. The game is a continuation of Infinity Ward's previous Modern Warfare from 2019, and thus features a lot of the same core gameplay features and design elements. Though, unlike the 2019 game, this latest entry seems to borrow heavily from the likes of the spin-off Battle Royale experience Warzone, and adds in new features like armored enemies, survival mechanics, and vehicular combat, to try and mix up the formula. It's these additions, along with several annoying technical issues, that I feel greatly hinder an otherwise solid experience, and keep Modern Warfare 2 from matching the impact of both the previous Modern Warfare game and its much older namesake. So first, let's take a spoiler-free look at Modern Warfare 2's story. As I mentioned before, Modern Warfare 2's story kicks off after the events of 2019's Modern Warfare, with British SAS Captain John Price and American CIA Station Chief Kate Laswell having formed a joint operations unit called Task Force 141 in anticipation of further aggression from Russian ultranationalists and a fictional terrorist organization called Al-Qatala, after the US launches a precision airstrike against a high-value Iranian general. The new head of Iran's Quds Force vows revenge and elicits the aid of Al-Qatala and a powerful Mexican cartel to retaliate using a set of stolen ballistic missiles. It's this main threat that makes up a bulk of the game's conflict, as players will shift between various members of 141 to identify the location of the missiles and put a stop to the people responsible. For the most part, it's a decently told narrative, with some well-done character performances, high-octane set-piece moments, and the occasional plot twist. But if you've been keeping up with the Call of Duty series all these years, there's also nothing necessarily new here either. In fact, a lot of the best moments in the campaign seem to be direct homages to classic titles in the series, and rarely do they manage to outdo them either. Take this AC-130 mission for example. Back in 2007, this was a highly innovative addition to the campaign, and demonstrated the almost inhuman disconnect of an AC-130 gunner as they obliterate scores of infantry units below. But the Modern Warfare 2 version of this doesn't feel nearly as creative. The novelty of including a mission like this wears thin much quicker, which makes it even more curious as to why they decided to stretch it out across 2 entire missions back to back. If anything, being on the ground fighting with the soldiers you're tasked with covering would have been far more interesting, or at least having the camera swap between the two groups now and again. Instead, you're just stuck circling this small town for about 18 minutes straight, blasting away at anything that moves. Then there's this extended sniper sequence about halfway through that appears to take inspiration from the fan favorite All Gillied Up. And while there's a few moments that feel ripped straight from that old mission, the rest of this new sniper level has you running around large empty fields and shooting at a few scripted groups of enemies alongside Price, before breaching small structures in ill-advised solo breaching operations. One interesting mechanic incorporated here is the ability to choose your entry point and breaching method, using a large variety of different tools that can be equipped from the new backpack system. But it's still weird that we're breaching these small spaces filled with enemies solo in the first place. Now, there are a few decent missions mixed in as well, like the previously revealed Dark Water, that sort of combines the oil rig from 2009's Modern Warfare 2 with the opening tanker mission from COD 4, and sprinkles in some interesting physics simulation involving dozens of large sliding containers. But this felt like one of the only polished campaign missions in the lot, as the others felt bare bone by comparison. There just seems to be significantly less scripting involved with this campaign, something that's greatly defined the Call of Duty franchise's campaigns before, and the lack of the typical massive combined arms operations that previously made up at least half of these campaigns before seems entirely absent this time around, which I feel significantly hinders the game's variety and pacing. Next, I want to talk briefly about the gameplay. As expected, Modern Warfare 2 plays about the same as Modern Warfare 2019, with that distinctive weighty feel to weapons, the tight control, and the overall satisfying gunplay. All the new weapons included in Modern Warfare 2's campaign feel great, with seemingly accurate sound design and visual recoil that feels consistent with the impact expressed by the enemies in the game. And aside from a few minor instances where friendly characters would annoyingly bump into me at doorways, the AI pathing and level design still retain that Infinity Ward level of polish that I've come to expect. A few of the features that we've seen introduced over the years in games like Vanguard have been rolled back, like the ability to slide your gun when mounted, and a few returning mechanics like the slide and dive have been reintegrated to give players more options for traversal. But otherwise, all these core gameplay systems remain about the same. What has changed, though, is the addition of a few new features that seem to have been directly lifted from the popular Warzone mode. Players can, for example, equip armor panels in some missions, minimizing damage received and making direct open conflict more manageable. Enemies will also equip heavy body armor themselves, which becomes especially annoying in the second half of the game, when more than half the enemies turn into these goofy bullet sponges that can require an entire magazine just to break off a piece of armor and expose a weak point, even on the regular difficulty mode. A few missions even strip the player of all their weapons entirely and force them to improvise, looting resources from nearby shops and buildings, and crafting tools to help distract and sabotage the enemy sentries. And finally, there's this car chase mission, quite possibly one of the single most frustrating and absurd car chases I've ever seen in a Call of Duty. Where other games would have had you working alongside AI teammates in a tightly scripted on-rail shooting gallery, this game has opted to give the player more freedom in movement, allowing players to seamlessly swap between driving the vehicle to fighting from the side or on top. It's an interesting idea, but I don't think the execution was done well, as this sequence is plagued with incredibly inconsistent hitboxes for both enemies and the jumps that need to be made between vehicles, resulting in plenty of frustrating moments. The driving still feels just as floaty as it does in Warzone, which in and of itself is a disappointment, but having to also dodge randomized obstacles and constantly swap to new, less damaged vehicles as if it's an Uncharted game feels so inconsistent with the rest of the campaign's more serious tone. And it also quickly resolves a serious plot point in the most phoned-in way possible. There's even a cheesy boss fight at the end with an APC that fires a series of poorly timed volleys with its main cannon, along with a trio of evenly spaced mines to dodge between. And this isn't the only time either. Later in the campaign, players will face yet another weirdly out-of-place boss fight, requiring players take on a tank. Now, this particular segment is done much better, and even features some dynamic destruction to keep players constantly moving. But it's still an unusual move, considering the Call of Duty series has often avoided these very video gamey design choices in the past. But I could look past all of these weird design choices if it wasn't for the incredibly unstable performance and general presentation. At first glance, Modern Warfare 2 looks phenomenal, with a really impressive looking canyon environment rich with detail that reminds me a lot of that impressive Unreal 5 demo from a few years back. The missions that followed, however, never really seemed to take full advantage of what this engine is capable of, as a bulk of the game seems to take place late at night, and relies heavily on these volumetric light shafts that aren't behaving properly. There were a few sequences like this one in Amsterdam, and the previously mentioned Dark Water mission that do look impressive in some areas. But otherwise, the campaign really doesn't push the envelope all that much. There's also some major performance issues that need to be addressed, especially some stuttering that can occur when the game is installed on an HDD, which was so bad I had to transfer the files over to an SSD just to play. And a severe memory leak during the Alone mission that would get progressively worse after each subsequent checkpoint load. I also had the game crash to desktop a few times too, though these were rare and seemed to only occur between map loads if at all. Outside of those issues, general performance was just fine, and the game played nice and smoothly at a native 4K resolution with everything cranked up. There's still some more testing that I'd like to do once Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer drops this week, but from my first impressions, Modern Warfare 2 doesn't seem to raise the bar in the visual department that much. Though, if you were already impressed with Modern Warfare 1, then this game shouldn't disappoint in that area. Overall, Modern Warfare 2's campaign is okay, though still a bit of a disappointment, I had fun playing through the story and appreciate the extra effort that went into developing characters like Soap, Ghost, and Price, especially the new player choice banter that lets players choose their response to characters during missions. But otherwise, this is one of the few Call of Duty campaigns that I can't really see myself going back and replaying all that much. The level variety just isn't there, as most of the missions seem to be stealth-based, which is not at all Call of Duty's strong suit. The additional Warzone elements don't help its case either, as the game's serious tone frequently clashes with these obnoxious gameplay mechanics like bullet sponge enemies and cheesy boss fights that feel entirely out of place. Then there's the derivative story beats that have incredibly predictable plot twists, and the direct homages to classic games feel weird when the classic games did these sequences better. As a longtime fan of the series, I can't say I'd recommend Modern Warfare 2's campaign, at least not over past Call of Duty campaigns. Even when considered by itself as a follow-up to 2019, this campaign doesn't feel nearly as ambitious, and I certainly hope the inevitable follow-up takes things much further, without funneling the story through its online Warzone component like they had done in the past. But what do you guys think? Are you enjoying the Modern Warfare 2 campaign? Let me know in the comments section. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content posted every week.